Is it me, or does the cover to this game show Bomberman forcing the blue and red Bombermen to fight for his amusement? Bomberman II, despite the title, is the 5th game in the Bomberman series. It's also the 3rd one on the Famicom, but a lot has changed in the 6 years since the original Bomberman was released on the Famicom. This is another one of Hudson's prodigal sons, which they took out to other platforms, refined the formula, and then brought it back to the Famicom in its waning days. The first Bomberman was a simple score attack game. One style of maze, you blow up the enemies, and there's a lot of weird Taro Druaga style methods for obtaining extra points. Hudson followed that up with Bomber King. It was one of those Famicom sequels that threw out everything about the original game. The only thing it retains is blowing up terrain. And then they let the concept sit for several years, until they brought it back with something resembling the original gameplay as Bomber Boy for the Game Boy. But Bomber Boy offered something a little bit different, an idea that changed the series forever. You could link 2 Game Boys together and have the Bombermen fight. Hudson carried that multiplayer to an extreme when they made the PC Engine Bomberman, which, despite the simple title, was not a port of the original Bomberman, but a whole new game that basically defined everything that the series was known for, except the bombing. Which brings us to the wildly misnamed Bomberman II. This is actually one of my favorite Famicom cartridges. No, not the game itself, or even the cartridge that you could buy. I mean, this copy of Bomberman II is one of my favorite Famicom cartridges. Because 30 years ago, some young person in Japan decided to doodle Bomberman on the back. Presumably Maeda did it, but we can't be sure. I genuinely love this kind of connection to the people who use these games before I purchase them. Bomberman II actually has a plot. One day Bomberman was just walking along, minding his own business, when another Bomberman robs a bank and drops the money in front of him. So Bomberman has to bomb his way out of jail, and then find the person who did it. Bomberman has to clear 6 worlds of 8 stages each in order to do this. And on every level, you have to defeat all the enemies, locate the exit door, which will be beneath a bombable brick, and then leave before time runs out. Pressing the A button will drop a bomb, and it'll explode after a few seconds, taking out any nearby bricks. You start out only being able to drop 1 bomb, and with a truly pitiful explosion. But there is 1 power-up hidden on every stage, and you can use that to increase your firepower. If you wind up with multiple bombs, then they can be chained together into one long explosion. But the explosions are not simultaneous, so if something gets revealed by one explosion, it can also be destroyed by another. The flame power-up increases the radius of the explosion, and the bomb power-up allows you to drop 1 additional bomb. The bomb in a heart is the most important power-up. It's a remote detonator. With that, your bombs won't go off until you press the B button. It makes timing explosions to destroy enemies much easier. Getting the vest will make you invincible to explosions, but not anything else. And the pass wall power-up lets you walk through bricks that can be destroyed. You can bomb power-ups and the exit door, but you don't want to do that, because you'll destroy the power-up, or you'll release a bunch of enemies from the door. You're given 3 lives in Bomberman, and when you're destroyed, whether by your own bomb or an enemy, you keep any explosion radius and bomb count power-ups, but nothing else. And those power-ups carry over through continues as well. You have infinite continues, and there is a password system so you could pick up exactly where you left off. On every stage, the placement of enemies and bricks is randomized. And as a result, sometimes it's just unfair. If you start out a stage surrounded by enemies that can pass through walls to come at you, you're going to have a very hard time avoiding them. As you progress in the game, the timer becomes a greater challenge as well. If the door happens to be in the last possible place on some of those levels, you'll be very short on time. There are bonus stages in Bomberman that are triggered when you collect a Bomberman icon, and here an infinite stream of very easy enemies appear, while you have overpowered bombs and are totally indestructible. It's basically your chance to go to town and destroy everything. You only get points for doing this, though. Destroying multiple enemies in one blast or collecting the money icon will give you additional points, but you don't even earn extra lives with the points. That's how you play the single player mode, but what people really want out of Bomberman are the multiplayer modes. Bomberman II has two different methods of playing with people. Versus mode is one-on-one, head-to-head with another player, while battle mode is one of the very few times that the Famicom supports 3 players. 2 players on the wired controllers, and 1 player on a controller plugged into the expansion port. The multiplayer modes all take place on a stage that looks like the original Bomberman game, and unfortunately I didn't have anybody to play with me. In Japan, this game doesn't seem to be especially popular, but it seems to be due to the series moving to the PC Engine. It's hard to go down to 3 Bombermen on a very basic game when there's a lot better 5-player action happening on the next console over. While this is the end of Bomberman on the Famicom, naturally the series goes on for a long time. There's several more games on the PC Engine, 5 games on the Super Famicom, and Bomberman basically becomes Hudson's mascot for the 90s. He'll turn up in all sorts of games. I like Bomberman 2, but it's also not the Bomberman game I'm going back to. The single-player mode still needs a bit more refinement, which the series will get in the next couple of years. And the multiplayer isn't as chaotic or as energetic as the versions on other consoles. Bomberman 2 is a return of Bomberman to the Famicom, and it is the true Bomberman experience on that system. So if this was your only option, you'd probably enjoy it a lot. But it's not your only option for Bomberman.